To pause amidst a continual barrage of fresh horrors is a radical act. We can stop the constant activity to honor the dead, the lost, the discarded, the starving, the bombed, the deported, the endings. We can stop the constant activity to defy the systems reliant on this violence and fear and greed. Let us pause and be confused, despairing, rageful, grieving, and perhaps still hopeful together. During these 15 minutes, please do whatever you need to do to be comfortable, to be present to yourself. This is your time to just receive. And my pace and my tone is intentionally slow and deliberate. We want this to be an oasis in the grind of your workplace or the anxiety of not having one. We want this practice to be grounding and regulating and feasible to you in your busy professional life. This time is to reconnect with yourself amidst everything. And it's so important so that you may be connected with those around you, with the places and the spaces you inhabit throughout your day. We invest in this time for reconnection because it is between us where possibility lives. Each day I share a theme and a question, and share a reflection, an exercise, a song, a video. And it's meant to just shape how your thoughts go in the day, give you another perspective to chew on. And here are some of the questions we've been asking lately. This daily practice is offered at no cost, and I will share some links and QR codes later if you'd want to help keep this experiment going. Our word today is framing. What can we share from a new angle? Every day we are awash in frames, in what communicators like me call narrative frames. And for a long time in my career, I have been focused on helping to change the narrative that surrounds my entire sector of international aid and philanthropy. And when I say narrative frames, when I say changing our sector, it's about shifting people's consciousness. It's about readjusting our values. And in international aid and philanthropy, that shift, that evolution is intended to be from charity, which includes a superiority, to global solidarity, which includes collective action and interdependence. And my work and my career started up because I really wanted to see more support get to community leaders and grassroots activists. And that means having to address the privilege and the power imbalances that are rooted in our global economic system, but also in our history of colonialism and imperialism. If we care about transformational change, it requires new narrative frames. And that for me has meant recognizing lived experience as expertise. That means challenging the notions of small versus at scale. For me, it means getting political holding people in all hierarchies of power to account. It means decentralized or shared decision making. It means rigorous humility, which is a concept that I've written about, which is really about being realistic and clear about what we can and cannot know, what can and cannot be proven by evidence, and to allow a little more space for not everything to have to be justified all the time, to bring back a little faith. And I think, especially in these times, there is something that's happening in our narrative shift in my sector around the release of romanticization of doing good. That simple idea that every person can make a difference is no less true, but we are learning that also it requires much, much more in terms of how we relate to each other. So when I think of framing, I think of those collective, those implicit understandings of doing good, of helping others. And those have been developed over time, over generations. But basically, narratives are like the operating assumptions held by a larger society. The messages that we communicators develop all the time are really what we use to help shift those narratives. But we're really trying to get what's below people's understanding, what's even below their action or their behavior. It really helps us get to our motivations and how we perceive the world. I want to alter how we perceive the world sometimes. Um, and so what we share can either reinforce those perceptions or alter them. And you'll see as you start to think about narrative frames, every piece of news we consume, every piece of rhetoric we consume from a politician, every Instagram post, it is surrounded by a narrative frame. This person's ideas of how they see the world, this system's need to perpetuate itself. It's always there. And so when I think of some of the narrative frames that shape audiences when it comes to international work, these hangovers, these leftovers from a colonial worldview are very present still. And they look like this, like the other, right? That unrelatable, different alien to my own experience, right? The exotification of the other is a huge problem that continues, and it's rooted in the white gaze, and that has got to shift. When I think of narrative frames that need a shift, I think of the poor, labeling people as helpless or incapable or desperate. Um, and we think of helping as inherently good, simple, easy. But helping in our current society is often hierarchical. And we put more emphasis on the effort than what really counts. And in a selfish, kind of self-centered, individualistic society, that effort is the only thing that counts. I can feel better about myself because I'm helping. But are you? That's a question. Um, I also see narratives of like over there, again, part of that exotification, that far awayness, that other reality. But I also see activists portrayed as unorganized or naive or combative, when in fact, those of us who may identify as activists, the ones that I know and love the most, are deeply motivated by love. And so we all have a tremendous amount of power in how we use the narrative frames, even in our own selection of words, even in what we put out into the world with our voice. we can either uphold these cultural norms or we can create a little cognitive dissonance for people to think, maybe there's another story here. We each have our own version of events. Um, what parts, though, are left out of a narrative are often reflective of the power structures at play. I think about that in relation to our own families, our own teams, our own workplaces. There's a lot left out of the narratives. And we have an opportunity right now to be more complete, to be more accurate, and to welcome in other people's perceptions. So, either consciously or unconsciously, how are we inviting in other interpretations of reality? What are we seeing from a new angle? Those who follow the pause know that I am in the process right now of sitting with a woman who's had a diagnosis of inoperable liver cancer. And I sit with her and just listen to her life and her stories. A lot of them are shaped by trauma and early trauma in her childhood. But right now, I'm trying to have her narrate how she related to mothering her sons, even with all of this pain that she carried into her life. She told the sweetest story last night. Um, Her oldest had had a night terror, as children do. And she rushed to his side, and he was shaking and was very upset. And she held him and she asked him what was the trouble and what had happened in the dream. And he narrated that he was riding his bike and that it was lifted into the clouds and was spinning around. And he couldn't control the bike anymore. And he just felt so scared. And his mother very gently said, "That so hard." She didn't deny his pain, his fear. She said, "But what if the dream isn't done yet? Maybe the next part of the dream, if you had stayed asleep, was for the bike to bring you safely back to the ground." And she said his little ears picked up and he started to breathe again. And he said, "Oh, I like that, Mom." And he went back to sleep. She wanted him to look at that dream, that scary, scary dream, from a new angle. And it allowed him some relief, to relax, to feel safe again. All of us have things we can look at from a new angle. All of us need to get to safety. So let's look at how we frame things. Let's ask how we can shift our consciousness and reshape our values as a society. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing this time together. Please do get in touch with myself at any time. You can find me on How Matters, and you can also find here some of the ways to support this space. And as always, we end with a reading from the Terma Collective. May our eyes remain open, even in the face of tragedy. May we not become disheartened. May we find in the disillusion of our apathy and denial the cup of the broken heart. May we discover the gift of the fire burning in the inner chamber of our being, burning great and bright enough to transform any poison. May we offer the power of our sorrow to the service of something greater than ourselves. May our guilt not rise up to form yet another defensive wall. May the suffering purify and not paralyze us. May we endure. May sorrow bond us and not separate us. May we realize the greatness of our sorrow and not run from its touch or its flame. May clarity be our ally and wisdom our support. May our wrath be cleansing, cutting through the confusion of denial and greed. May we not be afraid to see or speak our truth. May the bleakness of the wasteland be dispelled. May the soul's journey be revealed and the true hunger fed. May we be forgiven for what we have forgotten and blessed with the remembrance of who we really are. Thank you for being with me. Take good care.